are going live with the Lessons Learned podcast. The news, half of it will be probably the pre E3 show, and then we're also going to talk about Steam and sales and summer sales and all that. So it's going to be we're going to be talking a lot of things this tonight, and we're on time as well. Well, as close as we can be on time, considering all things considering all things. Hopefully, there won't be any sudden interruptions. My friend Chapelman and I are welcome you to the program. And let's get all the E3 news. News about news. I suppose it's weird. E3 is weird. I'm never very comfortable with E3, but here we go. There is a bunch of games that are being announced. We have announcements about announcements in E3 because E3 is all about announcements. You probably already know about Fallout 76. You also know about Battlefield 5, Assassin's Creed, which I found interesting. They're going further back in time now, a time of the Greeks. I've heard some rumors that it's supposed to include like mythological beasts or something.
And I think it's also a sequel almost to the last one.
No, I think it's before, because the last one was, if I remember correctly, Assassin's Creed was in Egypt, but it was a time where the Romans essentially were invading Egypt and would take it over. So, and that's one of the things I didn't. I didn't play the game. I always had problems with Assassin's Creed. I tried to play the first one, and the UI was very janky, and the gameplay was like, this is not for me. Even though I do love stealth games, but there was something about it that never grabbed me. But it was like, oh, you're gonna make a game with Egyptians. Oh wait, you have Europeans here, because of course you have Europeans in the form of Romans.
Yep.
Like, there's literally more time. Ancient Egypt. There's more time in ancient Egypt, recorded history, nonstop or nearly nonstop, from the earliest dynasty to the time of the last dynasty, when the Romans intervened, and then from then onward to today, like twice, like 2,000 to 3,000 years more history. You could have chosen any of those time periods and make it a real Egyptian story, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we had to have Romans because obviously people must relate to some kind of European characters of some sort. So even if they're apparently the bad guys, it's like,
okay. I think that's why we haven't seen any like pure South American or Central American or even like European like myth game based on mythology of the natives.
Yeah, I mean, this was a game. There was one set in China, but that was China through the Industrial Revolution, which of course meant that Europeans had invaded China, so they were Europeans, and it was a side scroller. I mean, it's interesting, but so we now have possibly a new Assassin's Creed. Talking about Ubisoft, we're also there's going to be there's again announcement of an announcement. Sony is going to announce The Crew 2, the open world Ubisoft game, driving game, which got mocked the hell and back. The Crew really got hammered by critics, but apparently it's all well enough that they're gonna do another one. Sorry about that. That's the one of the windows I have open. And now we're gonna have The Crew. Also, news that there's a new Diablo project out there. We don't know the specifics of it, but it's another Diablo game. Yet another game that got pretty hammered when it came out, but eventually, thanks to the power of the patching, people claim that it got better. It also was the first game of the Diablo series, because the original two games were
offline, weren't they? Or
they were offline, of course, but they also were PC exclusives. They were not for consoles. I remember I did get Diablo 3 on the 360, but like I was saying before the program, it just bore the hell out of me. I was like, I just, I don't know. That's why
yeah, I've personally never been a fan of dungeon crawlers, but I know my boyfriend and my BFF love to play on seasons. I got a cousin too. So I know people that still play Diablo, although they tend to hop on whenever there's seasonal events.
Yeah, which is he now seems to be Blizzard's bread and butter for everything essentially. And that's the reason why I haven't played not Pillars of Eternity, but Path of Exile, which I started playing and very much looked like an online version of Diablo 2. And I was like, yep, bored. Just bored. I don't know why, but it just bored the hell out of me. And so I guess I'm moving on from that. Vampire came out, and we were discussing that before the show started. So maybe Chavo can explain exactly his experience with the game as it is.
So far, it's been all right. It's started a little slow. It's a slightly janky, as it has a lot of intrigue to it, but it is very slow. You gotta really want to play this game. So I've heard, I haven't read too many reviews. I've just kind of heard general thoughts about the game. Some people like it, and some people just think it's all right. My impression so far is the game's just going to be okay. So this is brought to us by Don't Not, same makers of Remember Me and Life is Strange. The impression I'm getting is that this is not going to be a Life is Strange for them. It's I've been having fun with it so far.
So it's from the same people that made Life is Strange?
Yes.
But now with vampires.
Yeah.
And their first and actual gameplay.
Yeah. Their first game was also like a you could call it sort of like a beat 'em up, because the main gimmick of the combat in that game was that you create your own combos in the menu, you unlock abilities, and you kind of chain them as best as you want. It sort of makes sort of a beat to it. And then there was the memory gimmick, which was featured heavily in the marketing, but it really wasn't there all that often in the main game. And that's sort of where they got the idea with the rewind powers for Life is Strange. And Remember Me didn't do too well. It pretty much bankrupted the company and for their first outing. So,
ouch. Yikes. Yeah. There's been some news about, companies not doing very well this year. At least independent studios and the like. Talking about independent studios, well, not quite independent studios. Bungie. It's very rare because very strange the news that came out. Bungie got a massive investment from a Chinese company to make a new game. We don't know the specific. It's not another Destiny. But the thing about it is that Destiny is still tied very much to Activision. As their baby, Destiny 2, and it's still going strong. Whatever, criticism might be, people are still playing it and still making money. So why did Bungie go outside of Activision to get this funding from this Chinese investment firm to make a completely different game? Are they going to pull out of Destiny?
Are they trying to pull away from Activision? Maybe,
perhaps, which is, if possible. I mean, that's the thing. Is like Bungie. The thing about Bungie is that they started as the Halo company, right? The company that made Halo, but they were working with Microsoft because Halo games were exclusive to, they were basically a killer app for the Xbox series of platforms, Xbox 360, and Xbox One, etc. But it came to a point where they wanted to do something different. Microsoft said, "Well, we still want you to make Halo games." So we're gonna make this other company take half of your employees, make 343, and keep making Halo, and you can do whatever. And so they went with Activision. So now it seems they're in their same situation where their Activision wants Destiny, and more Destinies, and so Bungie now is looking for a way out of that as well.
Maybe so. That's the potential rumors of it. I've never heard of EaseNet before, and again, I'm looking at their wiki. It's a little plain. I don't recognize any of these top PC games they've created. They seem to have quite a bit of mobile games as well. So I'm wondering if maybe is Bungie getting into the mobile market, or are they planning to stick with PC? I don't know.
Could be.
So it'll be interesting. And what if it's just limited to the Chinese market as well? Is this just for a Chinese investor?
Well, I would hope that the investors want to get maximum return of their money, and while China is a huge market, especially for mobile games, I mean, you have South Korea, you have Japan, you have Europe, you have the United States, you have the rest of the world. The United States is still, I think, depending on what game you talk about and which category, by and large, still the largest consumer of video games overall. But it's being edged out in several categories, like, battle royale games and mobile games, that sort of thing. Other markets are bigger in that sense. But yeah, I mean, it could be, and also you have to understand. I think Activision and Blizzard are also sort of kind of merging together even more. They're moving to sort of become one company, not just this hybrid. And all of the and basically Activision seems to be acting under the Blizzard concept of Blizzard becoming the Disney of video games, where everything has this sort of particular Blizzard style and sort of trademark, right? That a Blizzard game just by looking at it. And maybe Bungie doesn't want to be part of that as well, right? They might lose themselves in their identity as a company and their products by just going along with whatever is happening. I mean, there's a lot of speculation. We'll probably hear more about it in the upcoming months, maybe next year. So probably by next year we'll have a somewhat clearer picture of what's going on. But it's a major change. Talking about Eastern game companies, Nintendo, of all people, took a huge hit on their stocks for some reason.
Yeah, the last I heard, they're not entirely sure why, but their stocks went down for a couple days.
And apparently it's because some investors, major investors, don't have confidence that Nintendo can continue to sell Switches at the rate they're selling them. In other words, you have increasing profits month after month. Because it's not simply a matter of making money, by the way. It's that you always have constant growth. Could we see a slowdown of the Switch? I mean, it's natural that we have a slowdown. That always
eventually
happens.
Yeah. What was that, a couple of weeks ago? Sony's pretty much said that their sales for PlayStation 4s have peaked.
Yeah.
And they're expecting to see a decrease of PlayStation 4 sales, which is realistic for any company.
And also Microsoft is also starting to do the thing they did, and let's do a little bit of going back to the 2 generations. Right, we have to sort of go back because we're in a kind of like people call this one generation, but really sort of like the second half of the generation with the expanded machines, with Xbox One X and the PlayStation whatever, right? But so people tend to confuse them the same generation, but I think we are clearly in a new generation. It's just that people only when the new machines come out, people will probably call this generation, one that really
9?
got 9 and 10, I suppose. 7th, 8th, 8 and 9, yeah, instead of being just 8, expanded 8th. But one of the things that happened when the competition between the 360 and the PlayStation 3 was that they started early to mid of the generation started going down in price. They had a price war, and so what would happen was Sony would take down their console, say $50 down. And so Microsoft will put another $50. So if your Sony platform was around $400, or let's say $450, they went to $400, then Xbox would be at 350 or 360 if they want to get cute, right? So that happened, and so one of the reasons why that generation lasted so long was that people kept buying machines because they were going down in price, and on all of that, of course, especially for Microsoft, was they managed to do something very clever, which was all those machines that had the red ring of death. They picked them up for free, right, and they gave new machines to people, and then they refurbished them. So the refurbished market, and I remember my first Xbox 360 was a refurbished machine. Then I got a new one that was later on. Kept those machines in the market, and people kept buying them, and so they kept buying 360 games and whatnot, and that made the 360 sort of one of the many reasons why 360 became the dominant platform of that era. And we might be seeing that. We've now seen that as the popularity of these machines are going down, you're going to start seeing a price war to keep them on the market as long as possible until finally the new machines come up. That probably might impact the Switch, because the Switch is, technically speaking, the cheapest one out there, around $300.
Yeah.
Where both of the other machines are, north of that. They're above $300 or $400 to $500
yeah.
still, bearing any particular sales. So if Nintendo can't slash their prices because it's too soon, they don't want to cheapen their product, right?
Yeah,
especially with the Labo not being as successful as they might have hoped it was.
And then I would assume the technology would be slightly trickier than a console because it's smaller and portable.
Yeah. So they came out of a relatively lower price point, but that means that they don't have a lot of room to maneuver, right? A couple of years from now, you might see a Switch at $200, even $150, but now may be too soon for them to do that. If they get caught in the trap of being in this price war with Sony and Microsoft, who can afford to do so now that they have, especially Sony has these millions of machines out there, who knows? That might be another reason why people might be, investors might be worried that you can't keep the sales of the Switch going for a long time. On the other hand, of course, games. If Nintendo keeps selling games that people want to play and they're exclusive to the Switch, I think people are still going to buy the Switch. And I'm still waiting for my chance to buy the Switch myself. And I probably will buy it. If I buy a console this generation, it will be the Switch. Other news that we have, let me see, Red Dead Redemption 2. And again, the patching culture / microtransaction / culture coming back to bite us in the butt.
Yep. So they announced that there's going to be content exclusive to just a special edition version of Red Dead Redemption 2.
And one that has nothing to do with a season pass or DLC, right? Which, again, it's a couple of things. First of all, of course, the special edition will cost more than $60. So once again, giving a lie to the idea that $60 is the, the nominal, the ceiling for video games. That's not been true in a very long time. This is yet another example. Second, while there's a promise that this is bonus content that won't affect the quote unquote main story, still it is content, right? And it's content that if it's going to be in the special edition, that means essentially it's on the disc, so to speak. Right? Though people don't have disc anymore.
And essentially all you're really downloading is just an activation code that lets you access that file.
So in a way, it's also coming back to the online pass situation without a name, right? You have to pay more, which was the idea of the online pass. And it's also the fact that you still have the situation where you're chopping bits of, content in order to sell it separately, because that's what you're doing, right?
Yes and no. I think it's almost more nefarious. It's almost like what Nintendo was accused of doing with one of their Metro games, where you had to buy an amiibo. with in order to access like a harder version of one of their games. I believe it was the 3DS version. I'm not entirely sure, but almost think of it, you're attaching this DLC to possibly what, like $80 game with, or maybe even depending on how high they go, some crappy like $300 game that has like some crappy tat that you're gonna find on eBay cheap later on.
Mm-hmm.
It's I mean, I think that's worse than just buying the amiibo, because an amiibo is just gonna cost you $15-20 at the most. Well, I mean, I guess depending on how much you paid the game. So it's going to really depend on how much they price the special edition and which versions of the special edition it's going to come with. I mean, it's just, there's so many probabilities. It's sort of, and what supposedly it's not going to be sold as a DLC later, as what happens with a lot of pre-order special stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Bonuses, they tend to be later sold as DLC packs for $3 or something. So I'm wondering if they'll hold on that though.
Well, depending on the pricing patterns, it could easily be anywhere between $70, right? We should about $10. That's when it starts, all the way to 120 or whatever. Because of course, special editions also tend to have a lot of, well, let's call it what it is, tat, right? Maps and statues and all kinds of things attached to them, which makes it collectible, but not really, because if everybody gets a collectible edition, then it's not really that collectible, right? It's not like a long purchase or something like that, right? And so, this could easily bump the price up to 80. Probably I could see $80 or $90 easily, or more, but certainly going to be more than 60, clearly. I am not. I tried playing Red Dead Redemption on the 360. I have a copy of it, and maybe it's again one of those things. It happens with me sometimes where you have an open world game and the start is a bit slow. So getting into the game, so I never really got into the game, and it's not on PC now. So this one will have a PC version. At least that's what they announced. So I might be looking forward to that, but not right away. It's not going to be a game at launch thing. I'm not. Whenever it comes out, I don't think I'm gonna do that. I'm looking for other games that will provide that. What else we have in news before we go to the main thing?
So there was the announcement that 2K Games shut down Evolve's servers, or they're shutting down their dedicated servers and online features, essentially. So this goes back to the idea that you buy a physical copy of an online only game, sort of, and it's not really yours. Especially for this particular game that had a very troubled development. Well, I wouldn't say it was troubled development. It had a lot of controversies with the way they did a bunch of their things. Like, first off, Evolve was announced before we really knew what it was. You can pre-order it, and there's pre-order bonuses for it.
Well, they did the same thing that we're talking about with Red Dead Redemption. They had all this supposedly DLC, and it was there, and you have to buy these sort of different packages, and it was a mess. It was a mess. So people didn't know what they were buying.
And then I believe that once it launched, there was different tiers. There was a lot of you pretty much needed a flow chart of like, all right, so which version of the game are you going to buy and what you're going to get. And then there was just a ton of skins. It would cost you hundreds of dollars just to get everything on top of paying the $60 for this game. And then I think interest really waned fast for it, and then they later sort of rebooted the series by making it Evolve 2 or Evolved Stage 2.
Yeah.
So they sort of rebooted it. I would assume sort of akin to a Final Fantasy 14, where if you already bought the first game, you get it for free. But that was almost like what, 2 years ago, and
about
now
2 years,
yeah. So now the the dedicated servers are being shut down.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, it'll still be a playable peer to peer,
Mm-hmm.
but I guess that's some consolation, and most online games don't even get that anymore.
Yeah, that's true.
But I mean, that just goes to show.
I mean, I think the thing with Evolve was that it was an interesting concept. At the time, there were a lot of games that were experimenting, and still some of them are experimenting with sort of like competitive play, but in the sense of not being uneven in competitive play. Right, you
Mm-hmm.
have like a very powerful monster here, and then you have a group of people, or you have there's like horror games like Jason. I think there's a Jason game where one plays the monster, Jason again, sort of team versus the monster. That's sort of the theme in many of these games.
Yeah.
But the way things progressed and evolve, ironically, wasn't conductive to sort of a good flow of gameplay, a gameplay flow. So people were like, well, it's not fun.
Mm-hmm.
And
So
yeah, go ahead.
yeah, that's that. It almost. I mean, at some point, one of those games do sort of end, but it just kind of feels like a slap in the face to
Yeah.
anyone who supported it over the years.
Talking about a company that is, I don't know the name of the company itself. I'm gonna have to look it up. But there is, and I think I mentioned this last time, but I'm gonna talk about it again because so far they're doing it right, as far as I'm concerned. It's the name of the game. It's called Project Wingman. It's a Kickstarter, and the people who are making it, and you can search Project Wingman on the interwebs on the Google, and they released a executable, a game, a demo. One of the reasons why I think it's, first of all, it's very cool because it's an Ace Combat game coming for the PC. None of the Ace Combat games have always been console inclusives, either for the PlayStation or the Xbox. They started on the PlayStation, then they switched to the Xbox. They promised, I think, Ace Combat 7 was going to come out to the PC, and they might be some news about that in E3, but we haven't heard a lot about it. But it may or may not come. And I think it's been like 4 years now that we haven't had an Ace Combat game. Project Wingman looks and sounds very much like an Ace Combat game, and the way they're doing their Kickstarter is, it's not, oh, give us money and might give you something eventually. They're like, no, here's a demo. There's 3 missions. There's air-to-air mission and an air-to-ground mission and their mixed mission. You play it's arcade. So, like, for example, you get hit by a missile, something like that, you have like a hull or something like that, and weapons recharge and whatnot. They have cooling times and all that. You have limited numbers, but it's like, I think one missiles like you have 120 missiles, something like that, right? So it's not, if people are looking for this all-time flight combat sims kind of thing, they're not gonna find it because that's not that kind of game. But at the same time, it is fun. It plays, at least in my PC, it plays very smoothly. Have no hiccups, and that's a demo, right? On a Kickstarter project of all things. And I would like to see more games do that, right? More companies do that if it were possible, right? I mean, it is, they're playing to something that it's, they're basically cloning something that is well established. But what I've seen seems to be pretty solid. And I think that convinces me more to give them any more money than, say, early access, where I'm like, I'm paying you to be your QA, right?
Mm-hmm.
Quality assurance, and to test your game for the people who eventually should get the full benefits of the game when it comes out. So you're getting your money and I'm getting your QA, and that's never sat well with me. So if anybody in the chat loves Ace Combat games and just want a fun game, then check out Project Wingman, and download the demo, available on for PC. I don't know if the demo is, of course, available for, probably not for console, or because you can't download it there, but it's available for PC. So there's that. So I think we covered most of the news about E3. Of course,
Yeah.
E3 starts this weekend. It starts longer. It starts earlier, and there's shows about E3, and well, there's gonna be a lot of coverage of that, of course. And we probably will be talking about whatever big things happen. Probably most of the memes and jokes that come out next week at the actual E3 show next Wednesday. But Chapawan said, "You know what? Maybe we want to talk about something else." And I think the subject was Steam
The
sales, summer sales, Steam
yeah,
sales.
you actually brought up the fact that GOG has started their summer sales,
Mm-hmm.
which to me it's like, which immediately I remembered last year's Steam summer sales, which I kind of found to be disappointing actually. Normally it's like, oh hey, it's a Steam summer sale, everyone gets excited for them as soon as they go live on Steam. No one can go on Steam because Steam can't keep up with the traffic.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but last year it just felt kind of lacking, and I don't know why. If it's because the deals didn't feel that great, or if it's maybe because after years of seeing these games go on sale, maybe now it's not enough. Which sort of kind of made me wonder: are Steam sales or these seasonal sales, are they a good idea? Especially when it comes to conditioning players to expect games to drop like so much. Like we see Steam sales go up to like sometimes 90%, 95% off.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the time they tend to go to 50 to 75% off.
Yeah.
And that kind of made me think about my spending patterns when it comes to when I see games go on Steam. And I noticed that most of the games that I have on my wish list, I won't really want to buy unless I see them 75% off. Which kind of makes me think, does that mean I really want to play this game? Am I really that I don't want to put in that much of an investment in it? That I have to wait until I see it on sale pretty much almost free.
Yeah. I
And
mean, I just bought Gauntlet, the latest Gauntlet game, and I think it was like $4.95 or something like that. So it's a $20 or $30 game, and I said, well, I'm just gonna wait for the sale, and there was a sale, and that's what I did. I bought it for a very very low price. So there's that. But well, let's start with the wish list thing because I think wish lists are just sort of keep an eye on this game function basically.
mm-hmm.
Um, and I that's what I use it for, right? Um,
Yeah.
like oh, I saw these, and I have a very short wait list because I don't really get too deep into Steam. I'm not one of those people who just spends. Well, I use Steam a lot now that I'm streaming, so most of the games I have are from Steam. Not all of them, but many of them. But it's just like, oh, I need an online connection, so of course, here it is. And I notice some of my friends playing certain games, and some fellow streamers like, oh, a notification, this person's playing this. So it kind of serves almost like a backdoor notification, like, oh, this person is streaming because they went into their Steam account and that's what they have, right? If they didn't get the notification some other way. But yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
think we have been conditioned to have deep sales. But okay, I think this goes all the way back to two things: the promise of, well, let's start with the history of Steam itself as a digital distributor. In the early 2000s, um, Valve decided to create Steam and to tie every one of their products to Steam. Particularly their Half-Life, the original Half-Life. I remember I had a Half-Life game, and you had to
Mm-hmm.
go to Steam to go. And back then, Steam was basically nothing more than a spreadsheet. It was ugly. It was just a list of games, very difficult to navigate. Early to mid 2000s, the aughts or not, and nobody liked it. But as Valve put more money into it and became more attractive, one of the things they started to do was having these sales. and that's when Valve really took off. And it was at a time where people started questioning whether PC as a gaming platform would survive. But what was really happening was that PC gaming was moving out of the store and into your bedroom or living room, wherever it said you had your computer at. So there was that transformation. At the same time, console games were therefore taking on places like GameSpot and stuff like that. They became the big sellers because of used sales, particularly used game sales. And I think on one hand, digital distribution, the promise of digital distribution was that, oh, we can sell this game to you cheaper. Which, when all we talk about rent donation, all this stuff shows that that's not the case. In fact, games can even be more expensive nowadays, depending on what you go for, right?
Yeah.
So we haven't seen, at least in initial release, we haven't seen that price drop.
Like I see, like Vampire is it's $50 on Steam, and I believe it's $60 on the PlayStation Store. I managed to pay a little less for it because I pre-ordered it for through Amazon Prime, which will offer you a discount sometimes if you pre-order games.
Yeah.
Empire. Let's see. It is. Yep, it's $60 on the PlayStation Store.
Yeah.
Even though it's also a digital good.
And the talk about and eventually, of course, you had DLC and all that. So consoles started getting more and more into the actual digital sales, and now that's the predominant way of getting your games in most places, legal or otherwise. We don't condone here or express that you should go and do anything illegal, but that's the reality of the market anyway. It's part of the business.
Yeah, although I have to say, I bought it on Amazon because I'm still a strong believer of having physical copies, especially if you think you're going to enjoy a game.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very disappointed with the presentation. The outside cover is fine. It's no complaints there, but it's when you open it up inside. A lot of companies have been taking advantage of like the clear, transparent cases of. It started with PlayStation 3. It's moved on to PlayStation 4. They put like this usually awesome back cover art on the cover. So when you open it up, it's like, oh, there's this fancy art that might kind of excite you to play this game. And sometimes you'll get a manual, and those are I enjoy flipping through them, even if I don't read them. No manual at all, and no back art either. Instead, they put like all the warnings and whatnots that they're supposed to include, and don't dump your game, don't dump the disc in water and stuff. It's all on the back thing, and I was very disappointed.
Very cheap.
Like usually without, since they don't include manuals anymore, it's just a one sheet insert that says don't play frisbee with this with your dog. But nope. Now it's just the back art, which I'm very disappointed for this home entertainment.
Well, I think there was talk about. Well, I also talk about used games, because one of the things that happened with used games was that they had the natural inclination of pulling down prices. Right. A game came out at $60 for a console. Within the week, the first used copies will be back because people would either return the game because they didn't like it or because they played it through very quickly, right? It was a short game. Back then, 100+ hour games were rare.
Yeah, and even then it might have been younger kids on summer, let's just say.
And so right away, the first games would be about $50. So right there, you get a $50 discount. And within, say, 3 months, the game would be at a $20 or $30 less. And by 6 months, half price. And by the end of the year, it would be in the discount bin, right? So about $20 or less. And on Steam and other digital platforms, it doesn't work that way. It kind of does, but not really. And that is really all about popularity. Although sometimes in GameStop and physical copies, some games will stay at a high price, even the used games, relatively speaking, for a longer place. But usually it's a matter of time, because one of the reasons why they would drop prices as well was that they had to clear inventory, right? New games are constantly coming in. You only have so much physical space. Ergo, you need to clear this clear the aisle so you can have new games. A game that is not selling at $40, no matter how popular it is, it's just dead weight. It's just a dead
Yeah.
piece of plastic. You don't need it there. Again, that's not a concern in digital. I think digital is all about popularity. Like if you go and buy something like your Skyrims, your Witcher 3s, other popular games are still very popular. Those games at best drop to about half price at most in the best sales, and only temporarily. Usually they hover about 50, $10 to $20 from full price, and even sometimes they're still at full price years later because they're very popular games, right? And there's no physical. While other games, if their popularity drops very quickly, and because in places like Steam, the people that control the pricing, in theory, are the sellers. Because the way Valve says that Steam is not an online store.
They're just a marketplace.
They're a marketplace for games, right? They are a broker for games, right? People put the games on Steam and sell them through Steam. Like, going to the local farmer's market, right? The farmer's market provides a space. You put your produce, you pay them a fee for whatever, and then you sell your stuff. And also those fees as well, I think it's part of the reason why you don't see decreases in prices of very popular games. And so I think the real effect could be on indie and double, especially indie games. There's also an expectation that certain products have to fit certain categories.
Yeah.
Like I bought BattleTech brand new, but I bought it at $40 because it's quote unquote was as an indie game. And oh, by the way, a little piece of news: Hairbrain Scheme Studios was bought by Paradox this week, who are the distributors of BattleTech. But if BattleTech had been, and it's an excellent game, right? I loved it. It was a bit buggy, but I loved it. At $50 or $60, I don't think I would have bought it, right? Setsuna. What was the name of that game that also it's been a Double A Darling?
Oh, yeah. The was it the one that got kickstarted?
Yeah, the one about
Setsuna, I think.
Yeah.
We'll go with that.
Yeah. That game again was at a lower price point, right? Not a AAA game, and there's an expectation that certain games will have to be at certain price points, otherwise they can't sell. On one hand, that's pretty good because you have variety of price points, right? You don't always have to go to $60+ to get your game. But on the other hand, in order to get any kind of sale, especially if you're one-man team or a small team, you almost feel like you have to give your game away. And that might be unfair, right? Because, of course, the team gets their cut, and you put all this work into it, and even with deep discounts, especially during sales,
yeah, you
don't, you're basically selling at a loss, if at all. So it depends. I mean, I guess it depends how you see the market, right? How fair is something? Because I bought AAA games at $60. I think should have been at least half price or less.
Yeah, like so far, I get the feeling that Vampire probably would have been better at $40 price range personally.
No, and on the other hand, I think I would have paid a little bit more for some indie games. Looking back at it, I think I would have probably, played BattleTech at $50, not $60, perhaps at $50. I liked it that much. Also, but it's also because the way, different, it's a marketplace, but clearly different companies have bigger and bigger pool or something like that. Like From Software, they released their remastered at $40, which I think was an excellent price because it was just remastered, and it didn't have, basically just spruced up the game, but they didn't make a completely new game. They didn't add new areas and anything like that, so you're not paying for anything extra. Some might say that might be paying too much for just a remastered, but I think it was a fair price myself.
Yeah, like a lot of Sony's released a lot of like the Ratchet and Clank trilogy, the Sly Cooper trilogy, the Dexter and Jack trilogy for $30. So essentially, you're paying $10 for each game in the trilogy that's already been remastered. So I think that's like a fair price.
Yeah, and I think also you have to consider that physical games are still one of the excuses why, especially in the AAA space, prices haven't gone down. Is twofold. If you release a game on PC and on platforms, console platforms, you have to pay around, I think, $10 or so for the game. So in essence, a $60 game release a $50 game that includes the 10 extra dollars you have to pay to Microsoft or Sony or Nintendo.
Mm-hmm.
But that also means that because they're still selling physical copies, they want parity with that because they don't want to quote unquote undercut physical sales, even though physical sales have been undercut simply by the convenience of and the big push on digital sales.
Yeah, especially when you consider they have to put the store has to get a cut of that too.
Mm-hmm. No, well, it doesn't make any sense. So there's, I don't know, it's there's a lot of shenanigans when it comes to this stuff. You know, a lot of dubious areas like why exactly is a particular game being priced a certain way. Then of course you have the competition. GOG to Steam, they're putting more and more newer names. In fact, GOG is now doing more free games, which again, I mean, when you go to GOG, here's what happens when you go to GOG. When you go to GOG, you start with about 6 to 8 games that are free. Steam doesn't do that. Now, mind you, the games that are there are, well, they're not great. They're old. They're not, even by the standards that they came out, they're not great.
I think when I first joined, it gave me like Fallout 1 and 2 for free.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've heard those are good games, but I don't think I'd ever play them.
They're good, for what they are. I mean, one day we'll probably talk about game difficulty and all that, and certainly Fallout will come in, and Nintendo Hard and all that. And they kick up their summer sales with giving you a free game for about 24 hours, something like that. But question is, again, the companies, or especially in the indie space, or because they also sell a lot of indie games, why would they agree to do that? And they're hoping that if they can give a game free today, they will make a sale tomorrow. Because Steam also sometimes does that. Well, like they started doing that as well, like a free weekend. I picked up Stories, Path of Destinies for free. Didn't finish it. It was a good game, I suppose, but I got bored with it. Basically, that's what happened. And they were doing that because they were now releasing another game, which I forgot the title of which, and I never picked it up anyway. So I got a free game, but that didn't hook me personally to get the new game. So,
that almost kind of reminds me of whatever happened to demos.
We were talking about Project Wingman, which is demo, but demos are very rare. Shareware, shareware kind of situation.
Or like I remember when I first picked up my PlayStation 3, mm-hmm. The first thing I did is like, well, let me look for demos of games I can play. I ran into this bizarre demo for a game called BioShock, and I was like, I'm gonna buy that game, and I did.
Yeah,
but now you don't even get that anymore. We don't get demos.
No, but now we're getting like entirely free games.
Yeah, we get free games for the weekend, but only when we're told.
True,
and randomly too.
I mean, you don't have any control over that. I mean, the game that I got GOG was Xenonauts, which is a XCOM clone of the original XCOM, not the new XCOM series, which I have and I haven't played. I played the XCOM, the rebooted version in 360, when I liked it, but I haven't played the new one on the PC. I have it there without the expansions. I'll probably get the expansions later. whenever I get around to it. But Xenonauts was like, but I don't think I would have bought Xenonauts if it were given for free. I don't. Again, and this is where you run into another situation where the video game industry is so obscure in many of its areas and discussions, especially when it comes to money and pricing. I mean, I'm sure that indie developers don't want to, show people their checkbooks, right, and their home expenses and something like that. So there's that. You want to keep some privacy, but at the same time, like GameSpy used to be a thing, but Steam changed their API, I think it was what they changed, and they changed their mode of operations and their code, which means now GameSpy doesn't work with that anymore. So tracking sales, because Steam won't release sale figures, and usually digital sellers don't release those figures. And there's another thing we haven't talked about is, and this brings our old buddies from Electronic Arts and Ubisoft and some other places, is that they're also creating their own digital stores. And the reason why they're doing that is, again, that's when it sort of serves as a window into how much control they have on Steam. The reason I think Electronic Arts wants to have Origin and has Origin and forces all the games to be in Origin is because it gives them far more control over release and pricing. And they too, actually, they have a program where you pay like $5 and you get free games and stuff like that. Well, not really free games. You have to pay for them, just a monthly basis. They have far more control, right? And they can turn their online store into essentially a rental place, which is what they've done for their games, without having to, have their games drop in price. Although they too will have sales, but not as deep as or as fast as if there were used sales games on store shelves or on Steam necessarily. Like our old friend Andromeda, I bought that at $20, but it took a year for that game to drop that far. And let's be honest, the only reason why it dropped that far probably because it wasn't, again, a very popular game.
Yeah. I also pulled it up and I clicked on deals. The only two things they seem to have on sale are DLCs, and they're giving them away.
For which games?
Battlefield 1 and Battlefield 4. And yeah, they're just free, but there's no other sales. There's no other discounts. Like, hey, we're selling, I don't know, I'll take something, Titanfall for like $10 or something, 50% off. Nope. It's just, they're really pushing their access service. Like, hey, you can buy Dragon Age Inquisition for $20 if you have access. I think it's like, what, $30 is it to get game?
That's another thing, is that usually, even if you get the game in discount, DLC rarely gets a discount. So what tends to happen is like, oh, I bought the game at $30, but it has like a ton of DLC, and each piece of DLC costs between $10 to $15. So you can easily end up paying, especially if you didn't get a season pass, well over $60 or $70 for that. Of course, the people who bought it at release at full price and got a season pass or bought all the DLC probably spent over $100 or more on that. So I guess you do get a discount, but it's not a discount across the board. Like I got the old Skyrim. It's like, oh, I got Skyrim at deep discounts, like $20, something like that. But the DLC are still at the same price. So now Skyrim Vanilla Edition costs as much money as each individual DLC. Think about that. Even though DLCs are supposed to be downloadable content which expand upon, but not as full size of the main game. I don't know why that is exactly. Then you never see them.
So that just kind of makes me think if indie games or just independent developers ever have to start to sort of kind of anticipate Steam sales and design their games around it. I'm not entirely sure how you would do that unless you just kind of, if you're one of those people that those asset flippers where you just kind of put out crap, or you're a digital homicide.
I suppose. Well, the thing is, in order for a sale to be effective, you have to have a higher price too. So you
Mm-hmm.
can't. I mean, if you release your game during this, season sale, you can't release it at full price and say it's on sale. Well, yes, you're selling it, but it's not the same thing. So,
Or you can, I believe I once heard a story of somebody who, and one of these people who does asset flips kind of fix their price almost like, oh, hey, it's 75%. Normally the game is like $5, but then they bump their price up to like $20 and then like said that it was 75% off. So it's $5 now, even though that's what it normally is priced at. They just
yeah.
wanted to make it seem like, oh, it's $75. You should buy it.
And another thing I think goes back to the question of whether or not this actually helps or hurts is like, okay, if we're waiting for a sale, we only buy on sale, and we miss a sale, does that mean nobody buys the game outside of a sale? Like, oh, it's a game is $20, but it's a 50% off, so it's $10. Like sells a couple hundred copies, maybe a couple of thousand copies, and then
Mm-hmm.
goes back to $20. Like, oh, that's so expensive. So
Yeah.
you only, I mean, it's like retail on Christmas, right? Retail stores mostly don't make anyone real a lot of money until Christmas comes along. But now it's summer sales and fall sales and winter sales
President Day sales.
and so really to make an evaluation of the impact of Steam sales, we would need to have a lot of information that neither Valve or anyone else is willing to release. We're starving for information, and I think that's my biggest problem and concern, right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially when you have continually accusations of, oh no, video games are very expensive to make. It's like, well, if we knew the nitty gritty of it, a little bit more of it, maybe we could, see how true your claims are, but we just have to take your word for it. And it's not like the video game companies, especially in the AAA space, are known for their reliability and attachment to the truth. Hint, hint, E3 is around the corner. So basically, that's I guess all we can say about Steam sales, which is really not a lot.
Yeah, I mean the last thing I can really say is that does Steam sales kind of like hurt my back catalog? So essentially, are we just buying games because, hey, I like the idea that I have time to play this game, so I'm gonna buy it on sale? I mean, I guess you're sort of supporting the creators, the developers of whatever game, but I don't think it's all that great if you never play the game either.
Well, for me as a streamer, I think there is a benefit to having a back catalog because, first of all, although I've been playing relatively new games this year, sort of mostly relaunches like Neverwinter Nights and Dark Souls, that sort of thing. But it's like, oh, I finished this game. There's no major release that I care about that I'm gonna play. What do I play? Oh, here I have Payday, I have Saints Row, I have this, I have that. Okay, I'm gonna load them up. Or this is a free game that I downloaded from GOG or got from GOG. Let's play Xenonauts, right? And just fill the space. So for a streamer, having a back catalog of games and having sales is a very good idea. Especially if you end up buying most of your games, like most streamers tend to do. Only the big streamers get games for free, and even only just so many games.
Yeah, especially since they don't tend to have the time to cover everything else.
Yeah, and even if they get a lot of offers, you don't accept all the offers because the conditions are attached to them. But I would say that, but for the regular player, and this is something that happens, people just in Steam have, and they buy all these games and never play them, and Steam makes the money. Hopefully, the developers also see some of the money, but I don't think we'll ever really know unless we get, unless we're told in individual stories that whether someone did or did not make money.
Yeah.
Well, that is all we have for tonight. Next week, we'll probably knee deep just talking BS about all the shenanigans of E3, and actually we might talk about E3 as a thing, as a concept itself. That probably will be what we were covering next week, beyond simply the trailers and the hype and bow shots and all that. So before we go, Chapamon, where can we find you on the interwebs?
You can find me at Chapamon pretty much anywhere. I'm Chapamon on YouTube, and I am Chapamon on I'm Chapamon_Aragon on Twitter and Twitch.
And you can find me here on Lessons Learned 1. The 1 is important. Monday through Friday. I stream on the afternoons and evening, and of course I do this podcast as well. And you can find me on my YouTube channel on the Lessons 1. I revamp all the links. You can find them below. And it's also there's a Patreon link as well. I am 7 followers away from hitting associate. So if you want to support the channel, you can go to Patreon, you can go to YouTube, or you can join and follow us. So thank you all for watching, and we will see you when we see you. Have a good evening.
Good night.
Bye.